Good morning, and I'd like to call to order our Finance Committee meeting for Tuesday, October the 28th. Is there any disclosure of pecuniary interest? So I'd like to welcome anybody that is watching this live and congratulate them for doing so if you watched the long baseball game last night. But certainly looking forward to the discussion that we're going to have today. The first order of business is our set of minutes from last year, November 14th, 22nd, and 23rd, 2024. And Councillor Westman, will you move those to approve them as circulated?
Yep.
Yes, I will second them. And all in favor? And those are carried. All right, Catherine, over to you.
Thank you. So today we're going to focus on the operating draft budget, primarily admin, public works, and parks and recreation. So I have the report, we'll go through those items, and I just tried to highlight the kind of the bigger changes or things we should be talking about. But I also included two documents as well, which is one's called the Budget Forecast by Costing Center, and there's one there for general and one for Parks and Rec. And it shows the budget from prior year to current and the 2026 proposed budget shows you the change in the percentage as a guide. And then behind that report is the operating actual versus budget history report. And that just gives you the last 3 years of information as a guide by cost center. And so you can see what we've got the actual budget if you want to compare that. So we'll use the report as the speaking points. But if there's any other line as we go through that you want to have questions on or talk about, we most certainly can do that. That's the whole point of this, is to kind of dig through what we have presented here and what, in the end, what changes you'd like to propose to bring to council for approval. So I guess I'll just get started with the report. I just want to note that you'll notice as you're going through the report, there's a lot of one-time costs. And keep in mind, we could use the tax rate stabilization to offset some of that. We have about 450,000 in tax rate stabilization reserve that we could use to help. So let's keep that in mind. There's about, I made a list if you'd like it. It's about just over $200,000 of one-time costs in this budget. So created this budget with, you see it's not balanced. It's as if there's no tax rate increase, but of course we need one because we must present a balanced budget. Or we need to cut quite a bit to make it balance. So this year we have a 1%, each 1% increase in the tax rate will raise additional tax revenue of 61,600. And that's based on our recent report we got from MPAC. It's not the final roll book. We don't get that till December, but it's everything that they've keyed up to beginning of last week. So it's a pretty good indication of what will be in the roll book. But we'll certainly update and have that information before we get to the final council meeting, or we're presenting to council in December. So as you can see, to balance this budget, we have to come up with either raise the taxes 12.1% or find ways to reduce the additional 742,000 that we need to balance the budget. And I just made a note in there that the average residential assessment's 280,000, and what that number would look like if we had a 12.1% tax rate increase. And that's just on the municipal portion, not including the county or school boards. So there's several ways we can reduce that. We can, of course, cut costs, increase revenue, use our tax rate stabilization that I mentioned, or a combination of these things. And I put an example in there. If you want to target a 5% tax rate increase, there's still a shortfall there as well. So 0% is probably not the recommendation, but we'll work towards something that's that would work. And then we don't have any, the reassessment has been pushed off again, so all properties are valued as if it was 2016. But we did have some growth when I was looking at the roll. That's why we increased our 1% tax rate increase. Used to be more in the 50,000. Now we're just over the 60. So we have seen growth in the last year, which is good news. Hopefully that continues. All right, so I'll just go through, start with some of the revenue, start talking through these points. So the OMPF, we don't get that number until November, but I've heard I might have that even the end of this week. So 5% is what I estimated, hoping it's more than that, but we don't know. So I think that was our best guess to put in the draft, but we should have that number within the next week, as I've heard. So we'll update that as we go along. The municipal drain grants, this is just what we get from OMAFA. That's the cost of the drainage superintendent that we have expense later. We have been getting around $8,000 from them. Depends on how your actual expenses and what you put in. For 2025, for example, we asked for 12 and they came back, the max we'll get will be in the $8,000, about $8,000. So we'll see where we land with that in 2025, but that's why the number we have in there for at 8,000 for 2026 anticipated. It really depends on how much activity you have and how much you use your drainage super. Okay. And under, I don't know if I'm gonna keep going, or you can stop me if it's anything that you need. Planning and zoning. Or no, license, never mind. Licenses and permits, next one I want to talk about. So the building permits and fees, that number offsets directly our costs associated with the building department. So you'll see when we get to the expense side, there's the cost we get for Middlesex Center to use their building department, plus the cost of their cloud permit program, plus a small amount for administration, and then that's the total there. So it offsets. If we get more than that, we always put that difference into reserve for future years. Under user fees and rental fees, the garbage fees. So we had and you'll see in the expenses, this offset what we have estimated for the expenses from Blue Water Recycling. And I did the math with their increase and where the number of bins that we have and the rates we have will be, I don't think we need to recommend an increase in the bin fees for 2026. We did increase them in 2025.
I just have a question on that, Catherine, just for the recycling, since that's no longer our responsibility, how is industrial recycling being or commercial recycling being handled?
So we haven't issued a levy on those users. So we have an expense. We are being charged an expense on from Blue Water Recycling for those pickups, but we haven't introduced a charge for those. It'd be minimal. I don't know. So right now the whole tax base and the garbage bins themselves would cover that cost, the cost we have. So could we introduce something? It's possible. It'd be minimal. I don't know how we would administer that, if it's worth the time to administer such a small amount with that list. As we move forward, I know there's Blue Water has had more changes coming forward in 2020, will affect in 2027. 2026, they'll be covering any costs of more changes that are coming with in regards to the ICIs. But yeah.
I understand that we don't have a lot of users, that it would, to your point, it would be minimal. Do you know how other municipalities, though, are handling that? Certainly, we've seen and received a lot of correspondence requesting support that be included with by the producers, and, lobbying, the government to make those changes. But there's been no traction on that. So just wondering if we know how other municipalities, and particularly our neighbors, are handling that.
I don't know in particular on the ICI for our neighbors, but I know a lot of our neighbors never did charge for the recycling bin. They just absorbed all that within the garbage bin costs. Recycling was always free. But we always had a fee for recycling, but most others don't, never did. They just use it as part of the garbage. So I can inquire and see how others are handling that and come back with that.
As you say, it is minimal. But having our tax base subsidize, other users is a question, but perhaps maybe that's a discussion for 2027 when there is going to be other changes introduced, and maybe it's just easier to look at the program then. But we can
I'll make note
just
of
keep an
that.
eye on it.
Just was gonna jump ahead and see so the recycling charge estimated for 2026 is $6,550, and then would be. So that when we get to into those expenses for, yeah, 6,550, that then we would have to then collect if you want to levy, but otherwise it's covered by our bin fees where everyone's kind of paying for that, which I understand your point, so we can see how things progress as we go along. It seems like the producers are not touching the ICI users, it's just residential, so, yeah. Okay.
Sorry, I know we're going to get to that later, but do you still have just what line item that was? Just
Yeah, so it's on page 26 of I don't know if you're on the
Yep, no, I've
detailed
got-
one.
okay, yep,
And the cost center is 004050 recycling.
perfect. Thank you.
It's on, yeah, page 26 of the detailed document. I'm not sure what page it is in the agenda version. Okay. Public Works revenues, we increased that line a little bit. We're gonna continue doing the winter and summer maintenance at the EMS building. And then they get a little bit of it's ongoing with different aggregate revenue. And then there is also the revenue, the $75 road permit revenue that they get, which can fluctuate each year as well. So we just increase that to reflect kind of more recent activity that we know of. Okay. Under fines and penalties, I increased the penalty and interest on taxes because that seems to be what we're a good run rate, what we're working with recent years. Although we want people to pay their taxes. We don't want to have to collect penalty and interest, but it seems to be the reality. So that we put that in there based on our recent activity. Okay. So we get into other revenue. There are some couple items there regards to economic development. I'll just mention for the EDC proceeds, we did increase that to 1,000 as there has been interest in sponsorship for the movie night. So that'll help offset some of the cost on the EDC side. And then put a note in here about Summerfest because there's usually with Summerfest, we have revenue and expenses equal. So I don't know if you want to talk about Summerfest at this point or when we get to the expense side. And so I'll open the floor to Lisa to discuss that at this time, since we're here.
Sure.
Okay.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, as discussed with Catherine about Summerfest, we weren't too sure, knowing that the event is it is maintaining throughout the last few years, but now that a lot more community events are up and coming, you're seeing different things now. It might be a time to think about if the municipality still wants to run that event. And given that Canada Day is only a few weeks beforehand, we're kind of like doing the same thing twice in 3 weeks. So it's for discussion. Another point would to offset that, maybe there's an opportunity to do some community grants instead that um, promote more of those organizations doing the events, because obviously most municipalities, the municipalities are not the ones running these events. It's community groups and private organizers. So I think now that kind of things are definitely starting to pick up again in the community, new events are coming up and just something to think about. Obviously, we're still on board with continuing it if that's the wish of council. I think we would readjust what the event looks like. Probably the evening event may cease to exist and just focus on the daytime. But then again, we're in the same position as we're having almost the same event in Canada Day a few weeks beforehand. And maybe that's where we want to focus on the effort instead of repeating it 3 weeks later. So just food for thought for the finance committee to think about, and we can discuss that further.
Have you had any I don't know, feedback or discussions with, I mean, the Summerfest is, it's different than Bacon Fest in that it is 100% run by the municipality. So has there been any discussion with anybody of interest in either partnering or taking the load off for Summerfest?
Yes, not at this point, through you, Madam Mayor. It's definitely something we can pursue. I don't know if any of our community organizations would want to take that on. I think they find that they're busy as it is. But it's something that we could think about. I know in Thames Center, they actually have, I know we don't want another committee, but I know in Thames Center, they actually have a events committee where it's brought up of community members and organizations, and they run all the events in, let's say, Dorchester. They have a Corn Fest and Canada Day. So it's a group of people that would run these events. And I guess you could put Canada Day underneath that bubble as well and different things. But I don't know if any community groups would be interested in Summerfest, as it's not a moneymaker. It's a community event, right? It's just something that we offer to promote some, community get-togethering for our residents. So I'm not sure that they would want to add to their load the events that they already do. But it's definitely something we can pursue further if we want to keep status quo for 2026 and then explore options from that. It's definitely, absolutely, we can do that.
Okay, some of the other revenue items that I mentioned there, regarding our bank interest, I just kept the number the same. Prime rate seems to keep going down, but our bank account earns prime less 1.8%. So we're currently brings us to 2.9%. And so I just kept the budget the same, because bank accounts fluctuate. The cash and loan parkland, I didn't include an estimate in there, but all of that money would be transferred to Parks Reserve if there's anything that comes up there. I'm not sure how many new developments would be coming on next year. So that's why that shows 0. And then the transfer from tax stabilization reserve. So if you remember last year when the OPP, they came and gave us an estimate on their costs, and then they came back later before we went to final budget, that they reduced it. So it was council decision to put that difference, 114,000-ish, into the tax stabilization reserve to use for offset future costs. We don't have the number from OPP as of yet. I don't think that comes until later October or into November, I mean. But they did send a letter to council, and I believe that was in one of the council packages, that they were capping increases to at 11%. So we just went ahead and estimated when we get, you'll see this also, this comment when we get to the expense side, so I'll talk about it here. We did include the 11% cap, and that worked out to be the 73,765 in that budget. So we just thought to offset that, I pulled in the money on the revenue side from the tax stabilization as the plan. The communication tower,
Sorry, Catherine,
sorry.
just so I'm clear, so you said that we had at the beginning 450 in tax rate stabilization. Does that include the 114 or that is?
That's net of the 114.
Okay.
Sorry, I should have
Okay, yeah.
specified that. yeah.
Okay, all right, perfect.
So-
Good to know.
Yes, there's 450 plus the 114.
Plus the 114.
Because I know I had to, that we only had 450 to play with. The 114 was specifically only going to be used for OPP.
Right.
So,
Okay, sorry.
I just
Yeah.
want to clarify
No,
that.
thanks.
The communication tower with the Ministry of Health, of course, we can't collect that $1,000 anymore. They removed the equipment from the tower, and therefore we ended the agreement, and that was all part of that. So that was done in 2025. Okay, so that's all the revenue on the admin public works side of things. If there are any questions about revenue, or we can move on to the expenses. Okay, so now we get to the fun part with the expenses. The meat and potatoes of all what we're here for. So they're in the whole budget. We have an estimated 2% cost of living adjustment, and that is based on recent CPI. So in August, the Canada CPI was 1.9%, and in September is 2.4%. The Ontario CPI for September was 2%. And at the time of creating the budget and this report, we didn't know that the September one that was released last week. But then estimates with information there, we're predicting a 2% CPI for the end of the year. So we're comfortable with a 2% CPI to use for the cost of living adjustment it makes sense. So that's applied to all the council and staff remuneration and salaries. Some employees might see more than 2% because if they move on the pay scale, because we did introduce that a few years ago. So as people move to job rate, there is a more of a gap in there, but those at job rate would get the 2%. So then for council, the salaries and meetings, so I didn't change the per diem amount. That includes the same amount as previous years until we get to, there's no increase in that until we get to, they were already higher than our peers, and so until we get to in line, we're keeping those the same. And then the 2026 is the last year of the phased in salary increase for council. As the plan, plus cost of living adjustment applied each year. And then for council expenses, we increased that so since in 2025, we had the agreement with Quadro that provided they would lease the tap, like the equipment, like whatever, the tower, whatever. And then in return, they would offer internet services to council and the office in different places as part of that agreement. That ceased in June of 2025. So if council would like to continue to offer to pay for council's internet as part of the budget, then that's about $4,000 a year for the 5 members if they submit for it. But it is there as kind of I don't know how incentive, I guess, it's a bonus of being on council and provide the minimum fiber internet, whatever it is, if they're connected to Quadro. That's where that goes, so.
do you have any more to say about the expenses?
That's
or-
all I have to say about that.
Okay, just so I'm clear on the expense for council expenses, does that include the registration for conferences or is that on another line item?
So the council expenses is all the conference expenses. So I think in our I'll look back the numbers, whatever in the policy is about 2,500 per council per year. So that includes everything to go to conference, the registration, the hotel, meals, that sort of thing. Per diems are included in the salaries and meetings line. And then, of course, the other expenses would include the mayor and deputy mayor's cell phone reimbursement, and then now the internet. And then any clothing there's sharing that we have for
Can you refresh me on the clothing? What the clothing allowance is?
defer the policy, but I think it's if you get 300 a year and with 50% reimbursed by the budget. If you get the logo on the clothing. I can look that up.
So it's, yeah, it's just a reimbursement, right? Like, sorry, it's just 50%, I think, 50%, right?
Yeah.
50% up to $300?
I think it's $300 you can spend and 50% of that gets reimbursed.
Sure. What?
Yeah.
Okay.
Tax base 150.
To a maximum of 1.50. Okay, gotcha.
Okay. So moving on to, we have into the admin expenses. So in salaries and benefits, you'll see we have included in our budget, we have a request for an additional staff member. And we had budgeted as the administrative level position. And we added $75,000 into the budget to cover for the salaries and benefits, and that's salary plus all the employment costs and benefits. And I let Ron wants to speak more to that addition or.
I can speak a little bit to it. We've been talking about, that everybody's busy right now. We've been we're probably overdue by about a year and a half on this position. So with the additional position of the Director of Emergency Services, there's gonna have to be some staff support for that position as well. So we thought this was the most appropriate time to insert this into the budget.
Along with other things that we're seeing that if there's things like asset management or health and safety, different things, I don't know exactly how we would realign, I guess, the jobs and the roles, but we just found a need there to have an additional person and probably more at that level would be beneficial.
So has there been an organizational review done, a formal one?
A formal one? No, not at this time.
So would it not? Just gonna follow my notes here. Would it not make sense to do that? To Catherine's point, like in the report, it specifically says to support the Director of Emergency Services. Yet Catherine just said, but also to do other things like asset management and so do we know what we need?
So it's, I look at this as kind of the chicken or the egg. If we can get approval to do this, then we will figure out exactly what that position can do and how the existing staff responsibilities can be reshuffled Because right now, there's a few employees who are doing a number of different items. And it's just not, it's not the ideal situation, to put it that way. So,
And have we I mean, I guess you said, approve this and then decide what it looks like. But have we decided, like, is that the priority? Maybe we don't have anybody to support HR. Should we be looking at an HR person? Or to the point, has asset management grown to the point where that needs dedication?
there's so many, sorry, three, Madam Mayor, there's so many different potential duties for another position. And that's the thing that we've struggled with, is because do you put asset management? Asset management's a pretty specific skill set. Do you put that together with somebody who's also going to be supporting the director of emergency services with administration support? Like that's the kind of thing that needs to be sort of ironed out, like who does what. And that, and again, do we do it now or do we do it later? I can say with a fair amount of confidence, we need another person. How that all shakes out and what their job duties are and how existing employees' job duties will filter out. That's something that I see sort of after.
But does it not make sense to look at the organization holistically and figure out? Like, my fear is that you're just trying to put a finger in the dike and not really make it, like, just to fill that hole, and then not really looking at how the whole organization should look. I don't dispute that there likely should be another person in here at some sort of administrative level, but what is that? And what does it look like? Like, I think almost you have to figure that out first before you specifically say this is what it is. That's my worry. I go back to my own personal experience in running our business. And I constantly had people in saying, we need this, we need that, well, if I answered to that, I would have had 10 extra bodies there just filling those gaps with no actually rhyme or reason. To me, you got to, as we grow, as the organization grows, you've got to look at the whole structure and figure, what is it? We don't even know. Like, we don't even know for sure. Like, I know that administration is supporting emergency services as it sits today. But I also think this contracted position should be responsible for a lot of the admin aside from the regular reporting. I really do. I would really struggle with somebody coming in on a contract position with what we're paying this position and then expecting administrative support. That we don't even know what that's going to look like. So
I guess to address that issue, again, there's so many different ways that this could go, and I hear what you're saying about HR and asset management. Those are pretty specific skill sets that I think more than likely I'm leaning towards, being able to share a position. For example, North Middlesex just got an HR person. How much time does Lucan Biddulph need for a dedicated HR person? Would it be better to buy some of her time in North Middlesex? So those are the things that I would be looking at. So I guess the question is does council want that at this point in time before you would make a decision on this? And if that's the case, we can do that.
well, I guess it goes back to, we don't but council's never been presented with what it is that we're lacking administratively. I mean, I come in here like, again, with my background, looking, okay, I look at the organization that I managed and knowing that we needed an HR person. We don't have that here. So that is that's a flag for me. But then, I get, again, asset management. I just look at how that's growing. But council's never been presented with kind of what we're lacking and what it is we need. And then what's presented in this is to support a contracted position at $75,000 a year. So that I will be honest, I struggle with. I don't know, Alex.
Yeah. Through you, Madam Mayor. Yeah, I struggle with that too, because of this person that we're hiring. I mean, I know they're gonna have a lot of work in the startup to kind of assimilate and gather information and so on. But once the role starts to settle in, I don't see that there's gonna be a lot of that tight requirement. They're gonna have time for agenda for doing up reports and administrative work and whatever. It's not like we're managing hundreds of employees and huge budgets. It's not that involved. So I struggle with it too. I don't think that that's something that we could justify that additional expense. I mean, it's already gonna take a big chunk out of things anyway, just the contract fees, right?
I think, I mean, obviously as today and tomorrow and the next weeks go on, we're not making any decisions today and fleshing things out, but as I say, I don't know. Maybe at the end of an overall look at the organization, that's what it might tell us. I just don't think we have enough information to say that that's the position that needs, of all the positions that need to be filled, that's the one that needs to be filled. So.
Okay. Oh, so what I'm hearing is hesitation, and I get it. So what I will do is we will do that and get a report, bring it to council so that you can have a better understanding of what we're trying to do in this.
And as I say, like, we're only like 40 minutes into this discussion. So as the day goes on, there might be more information that might be shared. It might, who knows? But this is the kind of my initial reaction to this. So, and as I say, we're not making any decisions today. Just.
So you could, if council prefer, we could go have a consultant or such a thing that would then, I know other municipalities have done this when we had that modernization funding, they would hire a consultant, they would look at their whole organization and figure out, okay, you're lacking people in this department or this department, and how are you doing all this work? And they would recommend different levels and things. So I don't know what the cost of that would be. We could get an estimate and see what that looks like. Is it 40,000, 50,000, 75, 30? We don't know for our scale of an organization, but overall that's something I think others have done. And then they have that report to come back with the council and go, okay, this is what consultants say we need. How can we fill in these gaps, or if council chooses to? So as an option, we can look into. Right, carrying on, we already talked about Summerfest. The bank and payroll charges, it includes $4,000 for payroll services. Up to through 2025, we had a credit when we put in the new payroll system, and that's been depleted as expected. So we added in a cost for the admin and public works side of things in here. So right now it's about $14 a person per month that are active employees, and $1 a month for terminated employees that stay on for 12 months. Have access to the system for 12. So,
Okay, I don't have a question on that because I understand that. Just going back, it's not a huge line item, but just the Santa Claus parade, why is there no budgeted expense? for that. Do we not, now that we manage it, is there not
I
an
didn't,
expense? Are there not? I thought I signed a check for something for the parade for this year, so.
we could put in an expense item and then offset the revenue by the funds that we have sitting in a deferred revenue for Santa Claus Parade, because there were some funds when we took it over that are still continuing, as well as sponsorships. So we haven't had so it could have an in and out if we'd like. It's probably not gonna affect the tax rate as long as we have those sponsorships and the reserve that, or not reserve, but we have a deferred revenue for.
So the revenue line then, and again, I know these are not big dollars, but the revenue line for the Santa Claus Parade is not the deferred revenue line, right?
Right, it would just be what, we have an account that we can account for any sponsorships that come in, and then we put the expenses in the expense line, and at the end of the year, I look at that difference, and any difference I put into the deferred revenue or pull from, depending on what the year is like, so. If
Okay,
it, I don't think it would have an effect on the tax rate at this point,
okay.
but we can look at that as we move along, how quickly we deplete that, or if we have the
Do we
same
know-
level of sponsorship.
Do we happen to know, I know this is probably unfair, just on how much roughly is in the deferred revenue? How much is left?
Give me a moment,
Sorry.
okay?
I guess, well, Catherine's looking that up, just this, it's a good opportunity to also make note that the Santa Claus Parade in Lucan Biddulph is now run by the municipality, which is not usually the case in other communities. So it's a good opportunity just to remind everybody that the municipality is now managing the Santa Claus Parade.
And we had that conversation in last year's budget as well, that comments were made, and we had that, but we're moving forward with no change at this point, but it's always good to say that. So at the end of 2024, we had just over $5,000 available to use for Santa Claus Parade. So
Okay.
then in 2025, we'll see we get. I think we got a big sponsorship. Or there was something else I'm thinking of, that then we can just carry forward. And then we didn't have the parade in 2024. So that's probably why we didn't have a lot of the expenses, but.
I think, that's right, because of the snow. That's right. What? The pandemic was over.
The snow did not allow us to have.
The snow
parade.
didn't allow, yes. Okay,
So hopefully this year is different, but that's the balance that I had at the end of 2024. So depending on what we use in 2025, there should still be sufficient funds for 2026 to run the
Okay.
parade.
all right, thank you.
Insurance. So insurance, it renews every September 1st. So we already know the first 8 months of the year what our insurance levels will be, unless we add new buildings or a whole bunch of equipment, fleet, which is not in the plan for 2026. So, and then I did a small increase for the last 4 months just to have a number in there. And for general admin, it went up about 2.8% from the renewal. And that varies depending on, for different departments, as you've seen in the report. And that's, I think other years I've put a larger percentage in estimate. Anyway, it's for 4 months. Computer system.
Just back to the insurance, has there been any chatter from out there what insurance is going to look like? Informally?
In very informally, there's been chatter, but they're not expecting any large swings. That's the best way I could describe it. We're not looking at a huge increase. We'll put it that way. We expect it to be in the cost of living range. So. But again, just a reminder that doesn't renew until September 1st. So there's a lot of things that can happen between now and next renewal date, so.
Our various computer systems I have listed there, there's the annual fees that are for these ongoing systems, a small increase for most of them. Not much I can do with those ones. And then the repairs and maintenance for the township office. The increase is due to their increase in the base charges we have due to our meter size. So this building has the larger meter size, and we did put those in place for 2025, but we didn't have it in our 2025 budget. So we had a miss in 2025, but so we're including in 2026. The asset management expense, in 2025, we had a larger number there, and was a good portion was going to be offset by the tax rate stabilization reserve, which we have included in the plan. And that was higher in 2025 because of the legislative updates that were needed in the hiring of a consultant. So moving forward in 2026, we put a cost in there for different studies that we need to do. And in case for 2026, it's a updated paved road condition study and inspection that would then help us to include that information in our asset management plan as we go, because we know that's a living document. I don't know if Jeff had any more wants to say about that, or is that just the gist?
Yeah, and through the mayor, so currently in our asset management plan, we've been updating due to legislation, but we're still using inspections that were done in 2018. So what they're doing is a paper exercise on saying, okay, the road was in a condition in 2018, so we know we got to fix it in 2026. We don't know if that road really does need to be fixed right now, because we need to update that inspection. So part of that 25,000 is to go out and actually physically inspect the roads and put it in the asset management plan.
The donation for the Lucan Heritage Society, I kept the number the same, but I did move that line item into the 1020 general admin. It was down in flowers and lights, but never really made sense from our management standpoint. So this year I decided to move it, but the number hasn't changed from prior year. So if you see this cost center, it went up, but then the next one you'll see it's disappeared. Fundraising expense, I didn't put a budget in for that. That was for the recognition for the community center renovation donations. And as you see, I don't have also a line item for donations, although like that project's kind of as done. Although if there are other recognition items that were in the plan for those fundraising efforts, we'll pull that from the donations we receive, which are held in the building reserve fund. Okay. The election, so 2026 is an election year, so we had to include increased cost to allow for that. The cost of the voting system, we're gonna have 3 kiosks set up, and then additional staff time. We account for the overtime and we attribute it to the election. So that's like one of those one-time costs that I mentioned. The computer upgrades and maintenance, that's a document that we get from our IT partners at the county. So we use their services, and they're have a small cost increase. They go through all the different list of things that we have that helps run our systems and websites and internet, and or not cost internet, but all the logistics behind it, all the and then they also keep a list of all the replacements that we have to have. So this year we have 2 laptops and 1 workstation to be replaced. The workstation is in the office, and 2 laptops at the community center. And then included the, in election year, again, you have the new council will receive laptops. And then if we had the, a new office staff, then the cost of, to outfit the laptop and phone for that position would be another 3,200. So if that position doesn't continue, then we would be able to take that out. And then we also have a contingency included in there for small items that may break during the year, like monitors, printers, mouse, keyboards, that kind of thing.
That new office staff laptop and phone, what's the phone for? That's for the admin position?
That would be our desk phone because we don't have
Oh, a
enough.
desk phone.
Yeah, so a desk phone and a laptop with monitor and
Gotcha.
stuff. So we have depleted our extra desk phone. So as new staff come on, there's a cost. We have
Right.
to add a desk phone. It would not include a cell phone. Okay, so any questions about other lines in the admin general this time?
Just, I want to confirm. This is a question for 2025. Although it's under Public Works because it had to do with the museum. We did pay the museum 25. They're 25, right?
We haven't done it for 2025 yet. We haven't cut that check yet. They usually have to come do a presentation and we give them their
But I thought they
Payment.
did.
in 2025. They usually come in November.
Oh, do they?
I have
guess
not
that's
written
a
them a
year
check.
ago? Okay.
Yes, time flies.
I see. I don't know. I seem to remember they were just here, so, but anyways.
I will say they have started up, I believe, a monthly bingo at the community center that has been doing very, very well. So I think you'll see a little less pressure from them and hopefully even maybe a little bit of an advantage for us as well. So anyway, it's good news.
I'll follow up and see when.
I don't know. It
Tina
could
has
have
it
been
on
a
the
year
schedule.
ago. It could have been a year
Yes.
ago. It just,
No,
time flies, right?
that is to come. Okay, so moving, did you have any? So moving on to fire, so part of our levy, the township supports the two fire boards. Our two fire departments that we have, and in here we included a 20% increase in the contribution to levy, which is the same level increase that we had in prior years. Both of the budgets have been presented to those boards. And that's just in reflection of increasing operating costs and also to start and to continue to increase reserves for purchase of equipment. So I know there could be some changes in 2026 regards what that looks like as far as actual boards, but we'll still have the departments. It just looks a different way, just way the administratively ran, but we still need cost to run those departments. So that's the request. And then in addition to that is we know it's anticipated that there probably be a need to replace emergency vehicles in the very short term, and the lead time on, say, a fire truck is about 2 or 3 years. So in order to, and the reserve funds aren't sufficient to purchase that, so an idea was brought forward to have a special levy that would be specific and would show fire capital levy on the tax roll at a rate of, like this number can change, but we put out there $75 per year for, say, 4 years. It may have to continue on as we get more information, as we go through our process of the next step that we're doing with the fire emergency services. So if we do a $75 per year and we have about 3,100 rolls, properties, then it would raise about 930,000. And a truck, depending on what kind of truck, there could be in the $700,000 or so, maybe higher, 800, probably close to $1 million by the time you get to 4 years from, or 3 years from now when you order it. So, and depends where you buy it from. It's from the US, you have those, of course, could be tariffs or the tax rate has or the exchange rate has an effect on that as well. So I thought we have to have some kind of a plan, and that's proposed is a capital levy. It's kind of minimal. Some people would like it, some people haven't. I don't know what the public would, how they would receive it, but when it comes to fire services, our hope or our understanding is that people seem to really want to support fire services, and this is what is needed, then mm, that's an option. That's, I'm saying, because we wouldn't want to borrow money just to buy a truck. We'd want to have the capital raised would be my suggestion, and that seems to be the practice in other municipalities as well.
So
So
that
not
was
to use funding or borrowing for a vehicle.
for a vehicle, right? So that was my question. Do we know of this practice being done locally? I mean, this does not seem like, I don't know who suggested it, great idea, but it doesn't seem to me that this is a new idea. So do we know if any other municipalities have done this locally and their success, or what they've heard from their public on something like this?
I'm not aware of anyone of this that has done this before. It's kind of a new idea, I think, for us, but move on.
So I'm not aware of any other municipality that does this. The idea came up in that we have to raise, a substantial amount of money in a short amount of time. And obviously nobody likes to pay more taxes. But if I think you did mention that fire services is one area that the members of the public typically don't have an issue with and want to support. So if we do this properly with messaging and everything else, that this is the need, this is how we're going to meet this need, and identify it on the tax bill, I think the resistance from the public will be. And we're still going to encounter some resistance, I'm sure, but I think the resistance will be lessened if people understand that $75 that appears on your tax bill each year is going towards a new fire vehicle. I think people will accept that. And the good news about doing that is we can explain to them that this isn't buried in the tax rate somewhere that's just going to keep building year after year. Once we have enough, it drops off. If we don't need it, we don't need it. I think that's a good way to sort of not sell it, because that sounds bad, but it's to explain it to the general public in that manner. So maybe
It's 20 cents a day, $1.44 a week. Yeah. It's not like it's a huge expense, but it's a really innovative and smart way to raise that capital real quick. Now, I don't know what's our current money that we have set aside for that. I mean, I think we have some money already kind of in there, but would we need to raise 900,000, or can we, like, what would we have to borrow if we did? That's my question.
The current reserve levels for the fire departments, is that what you're looking for? Those were communicated in the recent board meetings as well. I can look that up, but I could say there's about 500,000 sitting in Biddulph Blanchard, but I don't know how that's gonna, what the transition, if we need to have some of that around. And then I think there's like 1 to 200,000 in Lucan Biddulph. But we want to keep in mind, we also need that to support if we have any overages in operating. So we don't want to co-deplete it, or if there's plans down the road, if you have need to borrow money, if you want to build, if you have a need for a building or something else, or other big equipment purchases, such as if you have to have, if it's mandated to come out and you have to have a whole extra set of bunker gear for everybody, then that's going to be a huge expense. You wouldn't want to deplete it all just to pay for one vehicle. So, and we don't know what's the transition with the Biddulph Blanchard with Perth South. Some of that's not, because we do share that with them. So that's where we're at. So I don't know what those funds would then be used for, but there's a little bit of money there, and then we collect a little bit each year from the tax levy, but depends on the operations, how many calls and
Yeah,
things like
I
that.
personally think it's a really innovative and great idea. I think it's a pretty smart idea. So whoever came up with it, great.
And it doesn't have to be the $75, it could be 50, 100, I don't, that just kind of gives you if it's that, and then the number of roles that can fluctuate as well. The last look at MPAC with, that's what we had as a good estimate. We don't know with the growth, or that doesn't include exempt properties, but we could include them because they still get services. But then they're used to getting a tax bill. So there's lots of ways you can look at, but this is a best estimate that we have at that level. Okay, so then the policing, we talked about it. So I had the 11% cap in there off, and then the increase offset using tax stabilization. When we get the final numbers, and we'll see where we sit with that, how much or how little we need to use of those funds there, or if it's, I hope it's not more than 11%. That's what they had communicated, the cap. So more information to come as we get that, but I think that's a very good estimate for this draft. Okay.
So I was just gonna say the 73,765, that represents the full 11% increase. You know, council may want to consider using half of that, because if you're looking at bridging the gap between where the bill is gonna be to where it is now, if you take all of the increase out of the reserve, you're not really bridging the gap. You're gonna eventually hit the wall and have to pay the entire chunk. So that's something to consider. I just want council to be aware that, you know, you can't do the same thing. If it's another 11% increase next year, you won't have enough in the reserve to fund that amount. So just something to keep in the back of your mind.
Okay. The next section, the detective inspection control. So in the building inspector, there's an increase there, and that's comes from our partners at Middlesex Center that we use based on their our new agreement and calculation method, and it's based on our average like building permits for the last few years and our roll book with the assessment value. And then again, that's offset by the building permit revenue, so it's not affected by tax rate. Health and safety, we did decrease that line a little bit, but still kept some money in there. The consultant work that we were working with was finished in 2025, so we don't have those costs. That's why the increase for the budget in the last few years. But we do have want to have money in there to allow to implement some of those suggestions and things as well. Our first aid CPR training is expiring later this year, so we'll have to allow for training for those people. So a total budget for health and safety of 4,500 versus 6,800 prior. The bylaw officer and salaries, so I have a base budget, which is 2% inflation increase. 2% inflation, as I know that we get our services from the Middlesex Center, and they've already approved a 2% COLA. So I know those rates will go that. And also and I'm trying to do a run rate, and we've seen an increase in bylaw complaints, so increase in use of those services. And included in there is also our winter parking enforcement, which we use a different supplier, tenant security, I believe. And then, is that right? Tenant. And then, so that's a kind of our base to run winter enforcement and our bylaw complaints throughout the year. And then in addition to that, we have, if you want to have our parking enforcement enhancement that we introduced in the last year, maybe a little bit the year before, last year mostly, as having, and we haven't know if we really utilized, we did talk about it at council earlier this year about enhancing that. So we may have started to tap into that and want to do throughout the year, rather than on an on-call basis. It was like they're gonna go and walk and do that. So we just kept that same number in for 2026 and maybe utilize that more throughout the year, the parking enforcement at 2 hours a week.
Okay, so we included the 8,000 in 2025. Have we used any of that? Have they increased their surveillance?
Uh, Yes, originally, when we started the year, we had it in for, if needed. So that we could call in, and if we had issues. And then I believe about halfway through the year, I think council directed that, we would like a little more, patrolling done during the summertime. So that was implemented. I'll be honest with you, Julie and I just had a meeting about that, and I think there's more information needing to come to council on how we do bylaw and how the last 6 months have gone, and just how everything is working on the bylaw side of things. Because I'll be honest, at this point, I'm not saying that we have a real cool running system in bylaw right now. So I'd rather not remove money out of the budget. I don't think we need to add any money to the budget, but I don't want to remove money from the budget right now.
So when you say bylaw, are you talking bylaw in general, or are you just talking parking enforcement bylaw?
Generally, parking enforcement is what Julie and I have been talking about because of this 6 months patrolling and seeing what's going on there. That's really what we want to make sure how we nail down for next year. But I certainly, as bylaw continues, and I think everybody on council knows that our bylaw numbers keep going up, and our inquiries in the office here are going up. And more of our time are spent on bylaw, and it's taken us away from our normal duties that we are supposed to be doing. I can honestly say Julie's probably doing a large amount of bylaw, but that takes her away from public works duties. So there is some aspect of that, but really I think what really we need to talk about on the budget side of things is how parking is working, or the parking bylaw is being enforced, and currently what we're doing and how that's working. So, yeah.
At what point, and okay, maybe this is what is coming down the pipe, but I guess just like when I look at everything, like even like building and bylaw, like at what is the threshold where you pull the trigger and say, okay, we need to do this, but maybe that's what you're kind of alluding to.
I think that's something we need to look at. And I'm not saying it's going to be triggered next year or the year after, but I think it's on the horizon that we have to realize. And I think Ron hit a good point, is that we're not the only smaller municipality in Middlesex County that are looking at certain things, whether it's asset management, bylaw, that sort of thing. And Middlesex Center is growing as well. So their pressures on their own officers are becoming more. So it's certainly a discussion to have on how bylaw is going to play out over the short, like the longer term, but short term, if you know what I mean.
I might just add, if I can, Madam Mayor. So, with regard to building inspectors, let's just use that service as an example. We probably, well, maybe not the last 2 years because building has kind of dropped a little bit, but when we were full bore, we were probably in a position that we could keep one person busy. The problem is that person gets holidays, that person gets sick, so that you need backup. Because under the Building Code Act, I believe it's there's time limits. From the time we get a building permit application, we have to either say no or issue the building permit. So there's time constraints that we're under. It's no longer a case where you can really have one person in that department. So you know, even if we were to hire our own person, we would still require some sort of reciprocal agreement with Middlesex Center to do that. And right now, you know, touch wood, I think things are great. I think with the online with the cloud permit system, it's been working fantastic. The regular builders are really, you know, in tune with that. It saves them time because they can do everything online. So it has worked well. I think the building inspectors that we do have through Middlesex Center have been doing a great job. I think the contractors know what they expect, and they have a good rapport between them. So things are working very well. We haven't had to increase our building permit fees to offset those costs coming from Middlesex Center. And that's I think a good thing, and I think that's a little bit of that is because everybody's so familiar with the system. So it's worked well. It's at what point do we cross that threshold? And the deputy mayor, I think for the last couple of years has said that. At what point? I don't think we're there yet. I just don't think we're there yet. We'll keep that in sort of in the rear view mirror, but we won't lose focus on that, but we're not, I don't think we're there yet. The bylaw side of it, that's I think if we had the statistics, and maybe when Jeff talked about bringing a report to council, maybe that's part of the report, what the increase in complaints and just neighbor versus neighbor complaints and those things, those are costly, time consuming issues that staff has to deal with. And a lot of times it's the personality of the bylaw enforcement officer that gets us through that. And we do have a great one. We call him Bylaw Dan. Dan Alari from Middlesex Center does a great job. He works with people and gets compliance. It's not about issuing tickets. I don't think we've ever actually issued a ticket per se. We get compliance through discussion, and you know, he's a good mediator between. So again, yeah, those are expensive positions and time consuming positions to hire. It's working well with Middlesex Center. I won't be recommending next year that we move off of that current model. So.
Just to, again, sorry, I don't mean to drag this out because we're supposed to be talking about budgets, but I think it's what we, and Ron's exactly right. But there is a little bit of a connection between Middlesex Center's bylaw services and our tenant parking services. And I think it's more on the parking side that we got to talk about and how this township wants to carry forward with that.
We have a line called press awards and dinners, and we increased that for this year. That includes all the service awards and the Christmas gift cards for staff. And also an increase this year would include the council appreciation dinner that typically happens in a budget or in an election year. So that's a small increase on that. The conservation authorities, so these values are provided by the conservation authorities when they were doing their draft budgets. I believe Upper Thames is okay, but when I did this ABCA to the max increase you would have would be 7, but yesterday they gave us their draft budget that they had discussed at their meetings the end of last week, and it's actually smaller than that. So I think it was about 5,000 or had that on my other page. 1 second.
Very often.
Only a 5% increase. So an increase of 4,600, not 7,000. So I can bring down $2,400 almost here.
Well, we will have to make sure that we congratulate and thank Councillor Hodgins for his work on that. My goodness. Said 46.
So the number should be 96,175. So that's an increase of $4,608 from last year. 5 should be the number, and I had put in 98,568. So I can bring that down by just under $2,400. Yeah, to be
Our work
there.
is done. Our work is done, Alex.
0.01%. So anyway.
Yeah.
Okay. Then we get into Public Works. I'll just mention the the first few items and then I'll get in and then if Jeff wants to talk about the rest of those items, I can let him talk. And then so the salaries and benefits and the road under roads, you'll see there's a decrease. But we reallocated staff where more appropriate. We looked at that and we put more time into winter control and flowers because we hired a new position, or not a new position. One of their existing positions is now more heavy on flowers than say roads. And then they support winter control. So you'll see an increase on the flowers side and then winter control under salaries and benefits, but you'll see the decrease in roadways. And that's the reason for that, just a reallocation of staff time to make it more what they were doing, the cost of those other services. Insurance, I already talked about, again, it renews September 1st and I included a 5% increase for the last 4 months in 2026. And then the repairs and maintenance at the Public Works building, increase that again, we talked about that with the increase in the base charge for the related to the meter size that we missed in 2025 budget. And did you want me to carry on with these items or, oh, yeah, okay. You want?
Yeah, that's why.
The repairs and maintenance on the equipment, so I just, over all of them, there's a net decrease of about $2,200. So the 2015 Freightliner, there's, the safety's done every year and we're gonna sell that in 2026, so that's a change in that line. The Western Star, we don't have anything in because we're gonna sell that, it's actually on Gov Deals right now for sale. And has a reserve bid, so any of those proceeds would go into our equipment reserve. The 2017 Freightliner is, we're still keeping that one, and I think that one's coming up for renewal, but the increase the cost because we have to do an annual safety and there's more increased ministry standards, but I don't know if Jeff has more details if you want to know that. That's a gist. The street, road, and 901 signs. So we added $12,000 and that's one of those one-time costs again for a Main Street parking review. So this idea came up throughout the year and it was something that was on our list to talk about at budget time. Because the deputy mayor had talked about having a review on Main Street and where parking stalls are, where they should be, signage, that sort of thing. So if Jeff can add on to that.
Yeah, so that was exactly, there was a request to review the parking on the downtown and the side streets for visibility and safety reasons. I did reach out to an engineering consultant to give me a price on that. I believe it was $12,000, I believe. So that's in that figure. So if council still, if that's something that council still wants to support, then that's where that extra money comes from. If that was something that council wants to talk about, that certainly would be a $12,000 reduction of that amount in the 911 side budget.
So what would what would they do? Like, what would it?
So visually, there'll be two people to go out and actually measure and make sure the visibility corners at each intersection is being met. look at if the lines have to be changed, look at up the side streets to see if there's no parking. And if that, again, the visibility and the parking is available on the side streets off of Main Street, it will be their main, what they're going to be doing out in the field, and then provide a report with recommendations on changes or signage, line markings and that sort of thing. Maybe as, if I'm got my speaker on there, just as we were going along, and you'll see some of the equipment go up and some of the equipment go down. Really, that's fairly normal as equipment ages. We increase the expense that we have to put into them, and when we replace them, we can drop that down. And then start again as it ages, we increase it. So, if you see a fluctuation in the equipment side of things, that's what takes place. So.
Since we're in that, just your budgeting, and I don't know anything about this, so you can tell me I don't know anything, but just on like the diesel, the clear and colored, you haven't changed how much you budgeted, and I get, it can fluctuate. I guess I'm looking at the clear. We have been under that threshold for a number of years. Are we thinking that I mean, again, that would only be a few $1,000s to change it by. It's not going to make a difference, but I just wonder how, I guess yeah, I don't know what I'm asking, but do we think that threshold it is realistic? Or do you just keep it at that, knowing that maybe one year you're going to be under, another year could be higher?
Yeah, so if we look at the 2024 numbers, and I'll start there, and with the clear diesel in 2024, we were sitting around 20, and this year, what the clear does feed is our trucks use clear diesel. Colored is put in our equipment. One of the activities we started in 2025 was we are trucking our own yard waste. And the idea behind the yard waste was that we were thinking that about $5,000 would go towards extra fuel for those trucks. So when 2025 actually ends, we'll have a better idea of what the clear diesel is. And the hope is that it's still around, we always want to be a little bit under. So hopefully it's around 25,000.
The other note I have in there under that section is for the bridge maintenance, that we took that down, and that, because the bridge inspections are done every other year, so 2027 it'll probably reappear. So.
Are you
Any
done
other-
with that one?
I'm done with the roadways unless you have anything.
Okay,
further.
just on the roadside drainage line. So 6330. Is there more, I know there's a lot of year-end stuff that needs to be done. Is there more coming in for 2025 that makes it closer to that 52?
Yeah, that's a very good question. That's one of the line items, and the one above it with or the one below it, culvert replacement. Sometimes we are very close to our budgeted number, and sometimes we may be less, just because if a culvert does need to be replaced, we pretty much have to. So we always want to make sure that we have some budget in there to cover those costs. On the roadside drainage, To go back to your original question, is there more coming? Yes. So as we finish up this year, we always get into a bunch of ditching and stuff later in the year rather than the start of the year. So that's a budget that we'll see more come in the next little while.
Carry on to winter control. So in the contracted services, that increase, it includes the $25,000 one-time cost from the county. So when they took over the Whalen line, in that agreement, they said there's a cost that will come to us in 2026. So we wanted to include that in this budget. And that's one of those one-time costs. And we split that between winter control and hardtop maintenance. And we won't see an invoice from First South. It'll just be with the county. That's the one time, and then they'll take over after that. The sand and salt, of course, we increased that by 15,000 to account for, of course, we increase in the use as we grow, and then there will always be a cost increase in the salt and sand.
And then maybe I'll add, again, that's a budget that there's a large amount spent in the end of the year, like right now. We're restocking the sand shed and the salt supply for the winter. Now, Catherine that is an inventory item that can be carried over, and we do keep track of the salt and sand similar to fuel for the new year, but you'll see that 31,000 go up considerably just because that's what we're doing right now.
You never know what kind of winters you're going to have either. So that's in the calendar year. So you just have your January, February, and then also have your December. So into hard top, there's some increases in the road maintenance. Again, there's just over 12,000 for regarding the Whalen line cost from the county. And then there's two major repairs that are going to take place, and that's the cost there is in the report for St. James and for Sainsbury. And I think if Jeff wants to expand on that.
Yeah, I definitely can expand on that. So you'll see that line item, the road maintenance is up. We have a section of St. James that it's on the hills. It's on the hill, and obviously there's a spring underneath the road. So a large portion, or not a large portion of it, a section of the St. James is cracking and starting to move around on us. So we're going to have to take a section up, put a drain in the hill, get the water out of the road below it, and then repave a section of it. So that part of that is what's in that figure. The other section that we're finding, and we're doing half this year, and I plan to do another half next year, is up on Sainsbury line. Between Breen and Mooresville, as the road goes down into the hollow there, the pavement has basically cracked and is aged and needs to be fixed. It's where we had a couple of potholes last year over the winter. We had a couple of inquiries of insurance claims on that section. So this year we're fixing the first half as you go down the hill, and then in that number is the second half, or the bigger half next year going up the hill towards Mooresville. Unfortunately, this year in 2025, we're going to be over budget in that line item because of that repair. But at the end of the day, it's a repair that it has to be done. So those two items basically account for the additional increase in that budget. Although I would say that 19,000 is the lower limit of what that budget should be as our, again, this is, we just finished paving Corsi in the last 5 years, so it's in good shape, but we're seeing Sainsbury now needing more and more maintenance because of the age of it. So it's just one of those things that starts to show up as our pavements get older.
Okay, so moving to loose top, the gravel, we increased that slightly, just a 2% increase for from 2025. And same with dust control, that's a 2% increase basically for inflation for both those lines.
Yeah, maybe a comment on the budget. I don't see a large increase on the dust control and the gravel, obviously, because that's why we're putting in 2%. One of the line items, and I will comment on it, is the repair or the maintenance side of the gravel portion. And some of this comes down to weather related. If we have flooding in the spring and if we have to fix the gravel road, then that's where that figure would come in. This year, we've really haven't had a bad season in the gravel roads. We're not over yet, obviously, but that's why it's down a little bit. So again, we put in 15, and the hope is not to spend the 15, but in case we did have flooding or washouts, that's why that figure's there.
And you did say, like, you didn't, and you just anticipate like the regular kind of inflationary increase in the gravel and dust. There's no talking in that industry that there's going to be any large fluctuations.
No, not like the last couple of years. We've dealt with, materials that have gone up significantly, but no, this one's holding these are holding their own.
Hey, under street lighting, we just increased that budget slightly. As the infrastructure is aging, and then of course more repair, and then there's a number of streetlights that increase as we grow, and so the hydro cost for that is included in that budget.
And again, one of the items that we've seen in the 2025 budget was pole replacement. We had a couple of accidents on Main Street that did take down a pole, took down a couple of poles. So when you start replacing those Main Street poles, they become fairly expensive, and that's why we saw an increase in 2024 and 2025, along with just the general, replacement of the item, like say a sensor or something goes in the streetlights. Because we put all new ones in, and I believe it was 2018, we're reaching that lifespan of those lights, where some of those parts need to be replaced. Unfortunately, in 2018, all the lights were replaced. So we start to see those repairs start to come up, rather than just spread out over time. They're starting to come due at this point. So there's two items there in that budget. So
If there is a collision and a hydro pole is taken down, can we recover those costs through insurance, like how we recover costs, fire-wise? Or are we like, through no fault of our own, we have lost a hydro pole? Is there a way to recover those costs?
So the quick answer is yes. But I can't state what happened to the one in front of Haskets, for example. Have we got anything from the insurance company on that one, or have we?
that was one that was not put through an accident claim. But the one down at, for instance, a good example of that would be the one at Nevin, where during the summer, a car, I think it was during a police chase, actually hit that pole and knocked it down. So I don't know if it was I don't know through our accident reporting, do we report that? But that would be a question.
I will follow that up.
So under waste collection, disposal and recycling, the estimated increase from Blue Water Recycling is about 3%. Because they're still working on their budgets, but that's the number that they anticipated. So if that changes, then we may have an update there, but then would be offset by the bin fees. But again, we haven't proposed an increase in the bin fees, but if something changes significantly with, if Blue Water has new information, then we may have to look at increasing the bin fees. And then under flowers and lights, so you'll see a big increase I talked about with and that line item includes the staff time that we reallocated from the roadways, and then also the cost of the flowers and the cost to put up the banners, like bucket trucks, and to put up the Christmas lights. And then we also included in that line item the $3,500 for the tree power program that we introduced in 2024. So we'll just continue with that. And that's for one event. So we do that and have done that in the fall. It's 3,500 for event. And then, yeah, so the flowers are the same. I think we're roughly the same budget for the actual cost of the flowers, but we're gonna have the Lucan Country Gardens do the planting of those pots, and then we'll have less pots and in the more in the downtown like we talked about last year. So that's the flowers and lights.
Okay, so with the flowers, we had less flowers this year, and that seemed to work well from, I don't think anybody missed them. I didn't receive any comments that people were missing flowers. Excuse me. So you're going to reduce the flowers even more. And so rather than us planting, Lucan Country Gardens is going to plant. So is there, I guess that's an offsetting cost, right?
Yeah, so in 2025, we did a review of where the where not so much the hanging baskets, but where the flowers were put out along the boulevards. And the idea at that time when we talked about it at budget in 2025 or for 2025 was that the flower program was really designed for the downtown areas, not the entire not the entire Main Street. So we looked at downsizing, and I think we downsized by six planters or something along those lines, and that really basically offset any additional costs in the flowers that went up in 2025. So in 2020, for the 2026 budget, there was again, and I'll between Carrie's no longer with us, but between Carrie, Julie, Blake, who's the employee that was looking after flowers this year, they again reviewed exactly where the locations of the planters are sitting. And again, found that there was a lot of duplication. We had planters underneath hanging baskets or near hanging baskets, and so the idea here is to better utilize the positioning. Again, an example of this is we had 3 planters at the office here, and we have a flower bed and we have 2 urns. So, do we really need 6 areas of flowers at the office? So we are looking at, I believe, again, I don't have the notes in front of me, another 10 planters being reduced. Not really reducing the hanging baskets, because the hanging baskets were already meant for the downtown areas. So there's really not a big decrease in that. We're looking at where we're putting the flower the planter systems. Having said all that, one of the things that we did was we started the program in May. We would order the flowers from the supplier, and we would plant them at the shop. Then start watering them at the shop. They need to take the flowers need to take hold in the planters before we can set them out, or else, you know, between the wind and the people and everything, they'll damage them. So one of the services that we looked at was having the supplier of the plants plant them, meaning we give them the planters, they plant them, they get them going. We know that they're hardy in the planters, and then we just set the planters out. So in that process, you know, it takes a little bit away from what our staff was doing. So that gives them a chance to maybe do some other things like on the road side of things. And then we don't have to bring on our part-time help maybe quite as early. Because they were processing that as well in May. So we looked at that plus the decrease in the planters, and basically the flower program again is not increasing this year under that reduction in what we've been doing. So yeah, so that was again the recommendation from previous, like from Carrie and Julie, who looked into the services that can be done, and they recommended that the supplier plant the flowers in the planters.
So then, like, and when you're saying the planters, you're talking about like those big cement planters. So we're moving them to Lucan Country Gardens
And they're going to plant
and
them.
they're
Or,
gonna plant them.
yeah.
And then we're gonna pick those big planters up and then move them.
Well, again, I think that there might be different container. We're hoping there might be different containers coming at some point. That'll be a discussion that we want to modernize those planters, those great big heavy planters. So we're hoping that we're not going to get into those big heavy planters. But yeah, that's my take on it right now, that if we're using the big planters, that they would be the ones planting them.
Did economic development, you applied for a ROD grant, and did that include? Do we know when we hear about that?
We're supposed to hear by the end of this year. We put in for 30 new big planters, so we haven't quite determined if we're gonna get the self-watering ones or the regular ones. We still have to talk to had to investigate that a little further, but we did put in for new planters.
You'll see that when we talk about when we do the capital at the meeting tomorrow.
One of just to follow up and I think Catherine did mention it, but one of the things that we've done is I've talked to staff, and if they're working on the flowers, to put their time towards flowers. If they're working on banners, to put their time towards banners. And we've started looking at, and not so much that it changes the budget, because we reduce their time on other, like on the roadside. So it doesn't, but it gives you a better perspective of what staff is doing out there. So it does, you know, it is a large increase in the budget, but there was reductions in other places.
And if we're doing that more, I may create accounts within this to show salaries, benefits, like I do with all the other ones, rather than just in one line, flowers, trees, lights. And then you can break out, see what's the cost of the flower program as cost of flowers and cost of running the bucket, the putting up the everything in the banners, or if there's opportunities there to spread that out to make it more, I don't know, more transparent or more better information, then we can look at that.
And I mean, as I said, and I don't mean to keep repeating, but like as I said, I never heard any comments about the reduction, and I'm assuming that there was nothing that was communicated to the office. I heard again, positive comments about the quality of the plant, of the flowers and everything, as always. So congratulations to everybody on that. But even though we've reduced it, I don't think to the general public that was an issue.
No, we did, I just to give maybe a brief, there was a few discussion at the very start because people get used to where a planter sits. But generally, no, what we really got was, there was some concern about the height of some of the flowers. There was concern about maybe the positioning of the planters themselves. And again, I don't think we realize this from a business standpoint, is that a planter and a hanging basket can actually hide a storefront if you have them too close together. So we actually were trying to help the downtown, but at the same time, we had a couple of comments about, if it's better positioned, spread out a little bit, it would be a better thing there. So we did have some comments on the positioning of them, but no, everybody's was pretty, they look pretty darn good. We got a lot of good comments about the front of the arena. And again, I know Carrie's not here, but I give a shout out to Carrie. She did come back this year and helped us get the program going and ordering the flowers and labeling them, that sort of thing. So I think we got a good handle on it. We're going to look at, maybe we could bring on a co-op student with Fanshawe next year. Maybe that's something we can look at. But until I talk to Fanshawe, I don't really want to get into that. But yeah, so anyways, there'll be more. It doesn't really change the budget side of things, so I don't really want to bring it up at this point, but at some point, we're still looking at how we can make the program better. So yeah.
Okay. It's gonna jump to the library. So I have a small increase in there based on our proposed run rate that we have for this year, where we think we might land, but then that's offset by the revenue we get from the county for the rent. Planning and zoning, I didn't there's one line item in there, the community improvement plan. We didn't budget anything in there in 2025 as well. We had enough in the reserve to fund the programs for 2025, and there could be still some in there, but now council had the recent presentation and there's possible enhancements. So depending on the level of kind of programs that council would like to adopt or proceed with in 2026, we have to then evaluate, is there enough in the reserves? I think after this year, there'll be around, I want to say around 68,000 left in the reserve. So it depends on if that's not enough to sponsor those programs, or in 2026, and we may have to look at putting money in there from the tax base. But I think there's more to come on that, Lisa, because we haven't adopted anything, that we just had the presentation, and the next steps would be, I think it's coming back to council later this year.
Yes, through you, Madam Mayor. So for this year, we're kind of looking at our overall expenses. At the end of the day, probably we've granted about $30,000 this year. And that's already taken off some. The county reimburses us 50% of our portion of the grant. So it's actually been a really good year. We've never had this much uptake in the CIP. And it was a bit diverse. We had some conversion. We had 3 conversions, 1 accessibility. So it's not just been beautification this year, which was, it's actually nice to see some businesses take advantage of the conversion ones. So yeah, so I guess the discussion will be with the presentation we just had from the consultants about, do we want to keep all the programs open for, into 2026 like we have this year? Leave the funds, whatever we have from reserve, to carry forward, which Catherine said, I think we'd have about 60,000 left over. But then it's the consultant saying about the tax incremental part. Like, do we want to do that? That'd be a Catherine thing too. Like what's, like the financial part of that, what's the implication for council if we do adopt that under the affordable housing program part of the CIP? That wouldn't affect the CIP budget, which is nice, that would stay the same. Or do you want to really commit to affordable housing for a couple years and say, hey, you know what, we want to push that for a couple years, since we've done beautification for 4 years now. So let's do we want to focus on affordable housing for a couple of years and see how that goes? So it's kind of one of those things, we could leave everything open, or we could really focus on affordable housing for a couple of years, do a switch over. But again, so the tax incremental thing will definitely have to be Catherine's review, or how that would, affect us possibly for the loss of that if one project did come forward. Mhm.
Are you like, so we had the consultant presentation and then it said next steps, a staff report is coming back. That's coming back in, I think, this second meeting in November, or when you thought?
Yeah, I have a meeting with the
Okay.
consultants tomorrow to
Okay.
kind of figure out those timelines. We did put it in the newsletter that's just going out today about feedback
Right.
from people, from the
Exactly.
public, just to get some more feedback from it. So it kind of depends on the consultant's turnaround time. If we can do the November 17th, whatever, like that Monday, that might be hard pressed. So it might be the first week of the first meeting in December. So I'll know that probably tomorrow after our meeting.
And then I realize this really isn't budget, but since you brought it up, are you going to bring a staff report to council about the projects that CIP funded this year? Because like that is, I think, a great story to be telling.
Yeah, we have our EDC meeting tonight. That's gonna actually have a report coming
Okay.
forward about that. So
Yep.
that'll be included in the
Next.
in our minutes. But if
Right.
council wants, I'll have a staff report within that agenda. But if council wants something in addition, I'll have an activity report anyways for the next meeting. So I'll include those figures for the next meeting regardless.
Okay.
And the whole concept with the tax incentive, the TIG, that's something new to me, so I'll have to do some homework and get my head wrapped around what that is, or how that works, what are options for fund that sort of thing, so.
Like that is interesting. Because if you liken it to what we're learning about the development charges and how we still have to make up the difference. So if you have a tax incentive, do you still have to make up that difference? Like, or is that just, is that just the way it is? I don't know. I guess.
That's part of the research and homework
Research.
to do, or if council wants, I don't know if it's spitballing, but if it's something you can use part of the housing accelerated funding to support that, I don't know. Or to what extent council may want to use those funds as an idea, but yeah, if you don't collect it one way, you have to collect another way, but maybe not, you just don't have that level. You don't put that in your budget, say we're not gonna be able to, yes, it's assessed at this, but we're only gonna collect this
Right.
for however long, 20 years, I think it was, but the net amount was supposed to offset, so I need to review the information that we got from the consultant, just to get my head wrapped around how that works in the math. Moving on from that, the agriculture reforestation, the one line in there that changes every year is the municipal drain assessment, and that's just to reflect the cost of the township's portion of various drains, so like the road allowances and that sort of thing. And we put that estimate in there. If we, as we have in the past few years, we don't use that we raise the funds, but they go into reserves for future at this time, so. And then we get to reserves, which is where majority or almost half of our tax levy goes to, and this is supposed to be savings for future projects. But we'll talk through those. So the equipment reserve, I have a substantial increase for this year. Of course, this will go hand in hand. You'll see we have these requests here, but also when we talk with our council meeting with the capital, you'll see where some of these projects are, and so it's kind of having both that information to make decisions on what we do with reserves. So we haven't had those conversations, but the information is out there. I mean, kind of go hand in hand. So for the equipment reserve, so we have a replacement schedule, and then we took into consideration the inflation and had a good plan, but it's not keeping up. Also, there's been proposed additions for other equipment that have increased to our increased contribution reserves to cover that for this year. And hopefully in future years, we don't have to have a 55% increase, maybe it's less, depending on what's planned in those years in our schedule. So when we talk about the capital budget and council proceeds with some of those projects, like for example, a new sidewalk plow, then this would be the implication that we need to order to fund those. The construction reserve, just their usual percentage increase there to keep funding that. It should be sufficient. Because we also use for projects there, you'll see in the budget, the capital budget presentation, we also can use OSIF and CCBF for projects within that category. We typically do. So I think that's sufficient for construction reserve. The administration, that's last year we introduced saving, we added 50,000 for to start saving for a new ERP to replace Keystone. That may be maybe 5 years from now, maybe longer. I don't know, but the cost of that's quite an amount. So I just wanted to continue with that. And after 2026, we'd have 200,000 saved if we continue with the 50. But the cost of that I've heard it could be somewhere 300, 350. Some are seeing much larger costs. It depends on the implementation of that and how that goes. If you hire extra staff, heavily use consultants, the cost of the program itself depends what I go with. So we're not moving soon. I know other centers are looking at that next year, so we're hoping able to piggyback on that in the future, but there's no end to Keystone. There's no end of life for Keystone, so we don't have to move. But if someday we want to be able to move to a better, more modern system, then I want to be prepared for that. Otherwise, you'll just have a big hit in those years. So if we can slowly save up for that, then I think that's in our best interest. So that's why that's continuing there at that rate. The building reserve that I added increased by 1.5% as in our plan, and that seems to be sufficient for that reserve. The Parks and Rec reserve, so we're seeing a big increase. So in 2024, we depleted a lot of that reserve when we made the strategic purchase of the land next to the community center. And then with the list of proposed projects, then of about $400,000. And then we have the 2 loan payments in there that are roughly $275,000 a year to pay for those loan payments. That's the pool and the soccer complex. And then there's a request to add 50,000 to start saving for a new condenser. So that brings the contribution for Parks and Rec to 550 if council goes ahead with all of it. But regardless, it should probably be in that's probably a high end, but then you also then should start saving for other years, because then this would deplete everything. You're back to zero and you're talking the same thing in 2027. Also, there's this will be a future report as we get through later into 2025. So in the next few months, when we made that strategic purchase and we pulled funds out of Parks and Rec reserve and tax stabilization to fund that with the sale of the industrial lot, the lands there. Council, we had discussed the opportunity that any of those funds could then go back into maybe those reserves. But once we have those final numbers, then we'll bring a report to council this year. So then council can decide where to allocate those funds after they've seen all of the operating budget and the capital budget and see where best those could fit. I don't think we've committed to where those extra funds could be, if there is any. There is in the industrial lot. Not sure about the nickel line, but we're still waiting on some final numbers there. So that'll come. So that's kind of the worst case, and then if, yeah. That's the Parks and Rec, that's the kind of the big one there. And then the streetscape reserve, so there's a list of items that, and we have a reserve that, for streetscape. If we get the ROD grant, the Rural Ontario Development Grant, used to be the RED, is, approved, then, we'll have enough funding in our reserves to do all those projects. But if it's not, then we'll have a shortfall, of about 40,000. If council wants to continue with that list of items that are proposed, and those will be brought forward when we talk about the capital meeting tomorrow. I think that's listed in that capital budget presentation, those kinds of things. So that's, if we're successful, we won't need it, or unless council still wants to put money away in the streetscape reserve to fund, further projects in that strategy that we had, maybe not in 2026, but further. So if you want to start saving for that in 2026, or defer that to when those opportunities come up, as they come up in future years. That's all I had about reserves in general and expenses. So before we move to Parks and Rec, is there any other questions or comments? I'm sure there are.
Just back on the question, the administrative reserve and saving for a new keystone. We don't know what that'll be called. Has there been any, you said that some municipalities are already moving forward. Has there been any talk about doing it collectively? Is the county looking to oversee anything like that, or?
As far as the county overseeing, I don't know what level, as far as what they work with their IT, but I know that, Middlesex Center is proposing to, move forward and do that through 2026. I think it's a year to 18-month implementation. They are going to work with the county procurement to write the RFP, and that, so that if they choose whatever product they choose, then the other lower tiers, other local municipalities can then piggyback from that and use the same program. So I think we'll be involved with what they're doing, and at some level, just to see, and then when they redesign, say, their GL, we could probably piggyback on that rather than spending a whole bunch of time doing that. And we talked about that at a recent treasurer meeting as well. Could we get together and kind of have something that would, a baseline that works for many, and work on this more as a team? Middlesex Center is choosing to, I think council's given them direction to have a more modern, ERP, like, so they're focusing on the kind of the utility and tax billing, the GL, that sort of thing. I don't know what's involved, if they want more, residents be able to see their information, access that through online, whether they don't have that with Keystone. So they don't have to move, but I think council's directing them to want to look that way. So, whereas others that are on the Great Plains, they have end of life in 2029. So that is, I think, Strathroy, and I think the county as well. So they'll have a shorter timeline to do that. Whereas I think the rest around Keystone, except for one other municipality, has a different program. So the ones that are like our size, like the Southwest Middlesex, Allied Metcalf, we've talked is like, what's the best solution for maybe a smaller one, and how can we work together to make that project smoother for all, like I said, but maybe in the GL, have a similar base for that, doing all that work, I mean, as a team. So the cost of like the RFP and all that stuff, and we'll see how like the bigger centers do that project, and we can learn from that or piggyback from that if there's learning, or we can use their resource, like a resource from them that can help us, or what that looks like in the end. I don't know, but that's the thoughts that are going through my mind right now. Some are using consultants, but I think Middlesex Center, they're going to utilize, have a temporary staff. They're coming back from like leaves or something, then they just keep that person and then put that person complier on the project. Cause it will be a lot of work for certain people, it will touch everybody in the municipality though. Of all the departments, but it will be heavy in the, I would say more of the finance side, the treasury department. So it's just having the resources not only to keep up with the day-to-day, but also to do a successful project. So does that mean you're using your people or are you using consultants or some other expert from locally? So all those things, it's not a small undertaking. It's going to be a big project if and when we do it. So just want to be prepared financially because others are, I know if the Middlesex Center, they're looking at, I think our estimate 700,000 and they're doing 350 over 2 years each year. So I don't know what's all involved with just the cost of the program plus the cost of however they're doing it. That's an estimate. And if I shared that incorrectly, I'm sorry. This
No,
is
I know.
gives you an idea.
No, we don't.
Yeah, some of that, like presented to council, it's just like, say you're buying a new snowplow, a new major piece of equipment. It's something that runs your municipality in a different way. It's maybe not as transparent or on the road as you see like a piece of equipment or a program, but it is something that's the base, your guts of your operation and administration. So it's something to be prepared for. And then if we don't need the funds that much, then council can reallocate those to something else.
Right. Okay. Do you have any comments or questions? Okay. Do we want to take a bit of a break for maybe 10 minutes and then come back before we break for lunch? Okay. All right. So we will recess for 10 minutes. Okay.
Okay. So we'll move on to talk about Parks and Rec. Start with the revenue side of things. So we did increase the ice rental revenue. We do plan to have the ice in year round. There's no, you don't have to take the ice out every year. There will be summer ice, and in 2025, we didn't have the month of June when we redid the ice, but we'll have a full 12 months of that for 2026.
But yeah, so no at all. Okay.
The concession revenue, all we have is there, we rent out the canteen space. And the renewal date for that contract is September, and we're anticipating an increase in the rental rate, which explains the increase for that line. The levy part, and I know I skipped over this on the general side just because that's where it balances out, but the levy contribution is what's pulled from the general to support the Parks and Rec fund, which is and that's to order to balance the 09, the budget, the Parks and Rec budget. So it has a big increase from prior years. As you can see with the different costs in there, of course, we have some one-time costs as well on the rec side. So that's just a plug number to balance at the end of the day. And comes from the tax rate. The pool rent, increase that. We've seen an increase in the use of the pool. That also includes in 2025, we opened the pool earlier in June, which was successful, as they're allowed to offer swimming lessons at a more convenient time. And so we're just recognizing that increase in the revenue there and continue to open the pool again in June.
I just had a question. Why do we call it pool rent? Like, I was confused by this. So what, the swimming pool? Because this is under revenues, right? Or-
Yes.
Right? So what is that? Like, where does that $50,000 come from?
So that would be the passes for the swimming passes, the swimming lesson fees, the walk-in fees to use the pool.
Okay.
Those are the revenue sources. We don't have private rentals. We didn't budget anything in the line for private rentals. We haven't seen that because we don't have as much available time given the public swims and the lessons times that we now have availability. So
So maybe we can just change the word rent to pool revenues, period. That covers everything.
that's just nomenclature. It's always been that, so I guess I can change that. That's easy change.
Yeah, I think that one's gonna be an interesting one if we open earlier, because we do have to pay for lifeguards, obviously. You know, and there's chemicals and maybe you're opening it sooner than what you normally would. Yeah, it's gonna be interesting to see how that balances out at the end of the year, but it's
Do you have
we'll see.
any thoughts initially?
Yeah, my initial thoughts is that it balanced itself out for the month of June fairly well, and I do think the budget numbers that we got in will be able to accommodate us opening up in June again next year. And I do think it was a well recognized and appreciated by the public for sure.
Yes, well, as a member of that public, I very much appreciated it opening up in June. So no. And it is interesting because obviously I participated in the aquafit side of it for the most part. And it was funny because I do remember in July, there was a number of participants that came in that hadn't realized that it had actually, those classes had been available earlier, and they were like, oh, like they didn't know. So, again, I wonder if it would be see something that year over year you would see more participation as well. But I think probably families also probably appreciated the swimming lessons earlier and getting that going. Yeah.
Okay. Hall rentals, we increase that to, based on what we're seeing in 2025. The demand for the different spaces, the multipurpose hall, those kinds of, the gym, those are seeing a great increase in use, almost no available times for the gym and things like that. So it's good news. Hopefully that trend continues. The
I was just gonna add if I can, I think the arena staff's doing a great job running that facility. It was to the point where Abby had said, if we're looking at another rink, we should almost look at another hall because she has so much demand for hall rentals for stuff. And, with the pickleball, there's gonna be walking soccer, there's all these new things that are coming out. And she said, it'd be great to accommodate everybody, but we simply can't accommodate everybody. So it is good news. We're making full use of that facility. Yeah, there's always, I wonder if we're gonna have to get into some sort of rental policy, who gets what and when kind of thing, just like we did with the ice allocation policy, whether we're eventually gonna be pushed into a hall allocation policy. But anyway, it's a good problem to have.
Yeah, and I don't want to keep beating it, but I know that I had a handful of people I've turned down, and that's just people that have happened to stop by my office. That's not including Abby on the gym hours. Like the gym hours are just full with programs and youth sports, and it's a good problem to have, but it definitely is a busy, busy gym.
I'm just wondering if we need to consider our future plans for the ice pad to include additional hall space. Like, would that be something we could think about, or?
Okay, I'm gonna jump in here. We do have another school under construction now, so we really haven't explored those opportunities with the schools, whether it's St. Pat's School, whether it's Wilberforce School, whether it's the new public school. I think you have to look to them to sort of fill that bit of a gap first before we'd ever really consider looking at our own space. Yeah. So anyway.
Is that, again, is this a trend we're seeing kind of across the board, or again, are we in a unique position where we're seeing so much demand for our facility?
When you mean trend across the board, are you talking
Like
other municipalities?
other municipalities?
I can't totally speak, but I do think there is an increased demand. I know I just happened to notice in an article, West Perth is looking at the possibility of building a field house because they have demand for that open space. As they're redoing their arena, they're looking at plans because the community survey came back and they really want a field house to have that open space area like our gym accommodates. So, and just to piggyback on Ron's, we have started the process and it kind of got delayed, but we will pick it back up as a reciprocal agreement with the schools too. To see if we could use a little bit more of their gym space and they can come, because we do have a bit of a unwritten agreement for them to use our facilities at times. So we'd like to get that kind of nailed down and then hopefully that'll open a little more gym space as well.
Was there are they, I thought that there was a period of time where the school board wasn't interested in public rentals and public use. And is that a shift, or am I not recalling that correctly?
Ron might be able to speak to the history a little more than me on that one.
So I was just gonna say, there's some security issues
Mhm.
that fall, but I think that security issue is more during the time frame that the kids are in school. So I think what Darcy's talking about is when he says reciprocal, it's the school kids can use it when our facility is basically more available during the day.
Mhm.
Our facility fills up sort of after school hours and evenings and weekends. So that's kind of where we're going. I don't see a crossover because I do think you'd run into some security issues. They don't want, adults using the gym when there's kids there kind of thing. But I do think there's an opportunity there to do it. And by the sounds of it, we're exploring it. So it's good.
Okay. Programming revenue. So again, just the trend with the senior programming, we've seen an increase in demand there, so we're just increase the revenue side of that. The summer camps, again, continue to be very popular, so we increased the budget revenue there to reflect the demand of that program.
I know it's very impressive. It is very, very impressive. Like it just, when you look at what we budgeted in 2023 and what we're budgeting in 2026, it is, yeah, it's a very impressive.
And the same thing with the grounds rental, like the ball diamonds and the soccer fields. We did increase that because they're based on what we've seen in 2025. And also for the soccer field complex, all the fields will be in use for all of 2026 season. This year, I think the premier field was only available for a shortened season, and then the lights were up later. So hopefully we can see a bit more in that. We'll have a better idea of how to budget that line as we proceed with that, or how the use of that complex gets taken up. Okay.
Just with so the soccer field and ball diamond revenues, that includes the agreements that we've got with both minor associations, correct?
Yes, that does.
I know it's a small number, but it's in that same, the Granton Park shows that there's nothing budgeted, but I believe everything is just encompassed in that pavilions line, because that's the rental of the Granton Pavilion, but it is being used and rented. It's just the way we have things set up, everything is getting put into the one line, so I can break it out again if you'd like, but that's just a small note. It's not significant dollars.
Yeah, so then obviously the grant and ball diamond falls under the ball diamond line.
Okay, other revenue. So advertising, we have the rink board ads. And we've increased that based on what we've been seeing in 2025. I don't know if there's, I don't know, did we increase the rates on that or just the number of spaces and uptake?
Yeah, and we were able to secure a couple actual ice sponsors that are in the ice. As you'll see, I believe there's two, which I think will open up, but that'll be a every couple year thing because we can't just melt the ice and put logos in. So every 2 years, we're asking for a 2-year commitment, and then every 2 years we'll reevaluate the option for in-ice sponsorships. And we can't take any on until the 2 years because that's when the ice comes out and we are able to put them back in.
And did that come from just interest? That wasn't something that you were pursuing?
Yeah, we didn't advertise it hard. We had a couple approach us, and when we were doing it, we did the minor hockey logo. They supplied it. We installed it for them. AVHA, skating club, and the juniors. And throughout that, we had a couple companies that came, so we were able to. We did have a actual cost in our fee by law that was put in before my time, but it was great. So we used it, and we were able to do it. So I think it's going to be a successful endeavor going forward.
Okay, the bank interest, same comments that I had earlier about in the general bank. The YMCA daycare rent, we increase that each year based on CPI. That's released, that's for December. So a portion we put in here, we take a portion of that to offset the loan cost of the renovation. And then the remainder gets put into the Parks and Rec budget to offset the operating costs of that space. What's new this, I guess, new in our budget, but we did have revenue in 2025 is for the rent at the 269 Main Street. And the amount there is what's listed in the lease agreement for that year for 2026. For grants this year, we didn't put a number in. We're never guaranteed them, so, but we are going to apply for whatever grant programs regarding such as the Canada Summer Jobs or Summer Experience Grant that we've had in the past. Some years they don't offer it. You're not successful every year, maybe every other year. So if we do get it, that'll help offset the costs and the actuals. But we didn't want to budget revenue if we weren't sure we were gonna get it. And then the other revenue is oh, I guess big note that I did the bank interest. I made a new account to that. It used to be part of other revenue, which shows why that's a big difference in those ones, but just put a little bit in there with any scrap metal that we get, and then we get revenue from the live barn subscriptions as well. Well, it's small. That's why the change in those two lines. Okay, any questions on revenues for Parks and Rec? And now I'll move on to expenses.
Just how much, where are we with the loan payments for YMCA? How many years left do we have?
Yeah, 2019 when I first came, I think, and we did it for 10 years, so it's not much left. Yeah, I didn't bring that with me. I can look it up. Second, I have to go to that.
And the money, refresh me on the 269 Main, we think that the 9,500 will cover whatever expenses we have for that building, or is that where's that money going? What do we decide is going with that money?
Sorry. The rental agreement included plus utilities, correct? So the renter has to look after all the utilities. So
Yeah, as of right now, we just repairs and maintenance, but we haven't put really too much money other than what we did just to kind of keep it throughout the winter and stuff. But since the leaser's taken over, we don't have a lot of costs, and yeah, the taxes and utilities and everything was included for the renter to pay. So that's really just going into the revenue line right now.
should be a net.
So they are they're responsible for snow removal, or are we doing that?
No, they're responsible for snow removal and grass cutting and all of that.
All right. So you're just, yeah. So the 9,500 is just going into operating, like we don't have it.
Yeah, and if anything comes up structurally or landlordy that we need to fix, we will do that. But
Yep.
Okay.
The daycare, the YMCA, the daycare space loan, it ends in 2029. And then when we continue with that revenue, then we can we still keep a split and just keep it in the building reserve for future use.
And I have to say, that was a great move on council's part. Absolutely. That's been a godsend. And I think, years from now, everybody will be looking back going, that's a great deal. And I think it'll continue to be a great deal. So.
Move on to expenses for Parks and Rec. Okay, so maintenance and supplies, just in general, increase there to, in regards to inflation mostly. Their, building maintenance for the facility, we increased from 19,000. So we have a base budget in there of 30,000, and then one-time cost for 2026 of $10,000 to clean up and repair the old dressing rooms. If you remember in 2025 budget, we had put in, we wanted to renovate the homeside dressing rooms. And that was contingent on, or further discussion to be had if we were successful with the grant or not, and we were not. So now, and then the conversation continues with adding a second pad in the same area. So I believe the idea is now just at least do some kind of upgrades, and 10,000 should cover it, but Darcy can add to that.
Yeah, no, I think Catherine nailed it there. We're just hoping to do a few repairs of the flooring that need to get done. Obviously, as we go through budget, one of the capital budgets will be to look at the creation of the second pad or the design of the second pad. So we're trying to kind of try to keep it as it is, but do a little bit of small repairs until we get to that point. So 10,000 would give us enough to do some painting, some hooks, maybe some shelves in the home dressing rooms just to make them a little more um, newer, I guess, and better, but try to keep the cost down until we can figure out our long-term plan.
The pool maintenance, we brought that down because the 2025 budget included the garage door, so we didn't need to budget that again for 2026. So project's done. The
Can I ask a question before you move on? Are you happy, Darcy, with the pool heater? It's been able to keep the pool at a temperature that keeps all the participants happy?
Yeah, I heard multiple things. We did have an issue with the thermometer for a bit, that it got a little bit too warm at times, but I think we were able to fix that problem by the end of the summer. And as far as efficiency wise, it definitely has the power to heat the pool to what we need it to heat.
Oh, yes.
Excellent, very good.
It was. There was one day that I was in oh, yeah, it was like a hot tub. It was. Some of the participants were happy with it. Others could have used it a little cooler. Anyways.
I made a note in there. We have a budget in there for the building maintenance, so that's where the offset with the revenue so some will go to that revenue will just end up in us. I guess it's funding other operations. But then we have 5,000 in there to capture the costs, anticipated costs perhaps with that building. The refrigeration expense. I think I'm gonna let Darcy talk about that one because that's an increase, more like one-time cost for this year.
Yeah, so the major overhaul on compressor one and top end on compressor two, to be quite transparent, are overdue for both of them. I sat down with our refrigeration mechanic and realized that we have put off over the last few years way too much on our compressors, and we've been very lucky that we haven't had issues. But these should be done. A top end should be done every 5 years, and a major overhaul should be done every 10 years on a compressor. And they just haven't been, and our compressors are fairly old. So even if we were to say that we only need these compressors for 5 to 10 more years, these need to be done to get us to those 5 years. So this is a must, and we're living on borrowed time if we don't do these major maintenance to those two compressors.
Darcy, just for comparison purposes, what's a new compressor worth?
Top of my head,
Just ballpark.
yeah, I think between 60 and 80,000 for a new compressor of that size.
It's too bad, I don't say this often, that the deputy mayor isn't here. Um, but he had asked, and I don't know whether yeah, it would be in this section of the budget, but had asked for the comparisons of costs and everything. So if we're keeping the ice in all year long, with what was presented, essentially keeping it in should be of no cost to us. Because what we're bringing in for programming and everything and rentals during those summer months is covering the cost of keeping the facility running. Right? I'm correct in that?
Yeah, I think that's a highly contested part with as you knew, with my report, but I do feel as though it's not a huge cost, if any, to run it throughout the summer. I do think with our facilities all being one general area, the staffing isn't a big cost. And obviously, as I showed with the hydro bills, we actually don't see a huge increase in the summer that I thought we would. So I do think that running the ice in the summer is fairly cost neutral.
Okay, moving on to administration. It's a big cost to run all of the programs and keep the facilities looking the way they should. This is where a big cost of the Parks and Rec budget is taken up. And that includes so again, the 2% COLA adjustment. And also there was the increase in the pool and the programs wages reflect, of course, expanded programs, and then the increase in minimum wage went up, and that goes up every October, and it was a increase of 2.4% this year, or 2025. That carries forward to next October. And then we base the camp wages as a starting point for that and carry on from that. The training and conferences, we increased the budget by 5,000 to increase in conference costs, of course, but also provide training for new employees. So in the turnover that we've had and we've had some new employees in full-time positions, so we just need to make sure they're properly trained and therefore increase the budget to allow them to take certain programs.
Yeah, I think that's generally, as a common practice in the refrigeration world, is you want to get as many of your employees to a certified ice technician as possible through the ORFA. So that'll be us working our new employees into that designation as we go along. It won't happen over a year, but it happens over a few years. But to get those courses to start building that.
The program expenses, so you saw on the revenue side, we increased the senior center programming revenue side. Of course, then there's increased cost in relation to that demand. And then the equipment and crafts, so we increased by 4,500, and that includes the 3,000 for iPads that we want to add for ease of check-in and check-out with primarily the summer camps, but could be used for other programs as well. Correct?
Yeah, and I think that's just that our programs and especially our day camp of having 100 kids per day, it's just getting very intensive on the check-in, check-out process and the registration process and making sure all their documents are there and all their health forms are there. If we have an iPad right with them that they can check everything off and do it, it would be a huge asset. So that's why we're looking at that. And we're looking at doing online registration with our software that we have now, it's looking like. So we're excited to be able to expand that, but the iPads will assist with that as well.
The utility, oh, so do you have a question?
So if I'm reading this correctly, senior center programming is now a cost of 16,000. And where are we capturing the revenue? Like I see adult programming at 4,000. Is there another line item that I'm missing? I guess sorry, I see that now. Senior programming is 30 that we think will come in as revenue, but it is costing us 16. Okay. And then the adult programming at 4 as the revenue, like what would that be? Would that be like your volleyball, pickleball, people? Okay.
Volleyball, yes.
Okay.
And I think equipment and crafts is also like the cost of that also supports some of those other programs as well. It's not just for camp. Most of it is camp, but there is
Yeah.
some other equipment that supports the sports as well. What is it? Okay, utilities. So of course, there's a general increase in cost of utilities. But in particular, the water sewer, we had a large increase. That's again based on the new base charges that we implemented in 2025 that we missed budgeting for. So just, there's a 3-inch meter going in there, and that's what's, the larger the meter, the more base fees you have, because you're relying on the system that much more. So 15,000 increase just on the base charges, and then there's usage, of course, goes up as you're increasing the use of the space. You're gonna use more water. Those facilities get more use as you rent halls and have programs. And parks maintenance, I've listed in there. Oh, go ahead.
Um, where is just trying to find, where is the Scout Hall expenses? Where are they captured?
Those be under Market Street.
Are they in Market
Park.
Street Park?
Yes.
So that's all of that is included. Okay, all right, we can get to that. Okay.
So that's the next section is the parks maintenance. You can see the various parks in there and they have like a base cost, plus we have some one-time costs. For the various parks. I didn't know if Darcy wants to just touch on that, please.
Yeah, I can quickly sum up because a lot of them are the same. What we're trying to do is get a picnic table replacement program because we are behind in picnic table replacements. If you go to one of the parks, there's at least 2 that are in dire need of replacement. So what I'd like to do is get a setup until we can get back on track with the picnic tables, and they do cost money, so they're listed as a one-time. Playground mulch, you'll remember we did playground mulch last year. We got it to the minimum so they could pass with the budget that we had, and everything was good. But with the snow and stuff, we will condense down again, and we just want to get it topped up so we're above the minimum so that we're in a good spot for a few years. So it did cost more than we expected, and we needed more than we expected when we did it last year. So it's just putting it back in this year, and then hopefully we'll be above and be in a good spot. And then garbage cans as well. We're trying to get them all to that standard. I know we talked about it at TCAC and PRAC that there was some very good feedback on those new garbage cans and where we have them. People asking for more, especially in the soccer complex. So we're trying to get to that standard everywhere. So this year I think we should be done with garbage cans for a while because we'll have those new garbage cans pretty much everywhere. So that'll be good. Then the only other one to touch on, is the building repairs at Market Street. We got the drainage fixed, but there is some eaves trough issues. We fixed the roof, we fixed the drainage, but eaves trough is in tough shape. So my recommendation is to get the eaves trough totally fixed, and then that should give us a good spot to keep the water away from the basement of Market Street Hall. And then the stencil fast line. It's a pretty cool thing that we actually kind of got sent to us, and we heard one other municipality has done it. It's a stencil program where they do all kinds of either games or uplifting comments like you're doing great. And what you do is you put them on your pathways. So as people are going through the pathways, they can play the games or get these uplifting comments. So we're budgeting to do a package of them that will then allow us to go to different trails. And like, so once we have the stencil, we just buy the paint and we put them on. So we think it's a pretty cool thing. And I think the public will enjoy it. We have some really nice pathways within our parks that we'll be able to utilize those. So we're excited for that.
I love that. I love it.
And then the only other ones would be we want to put another basketball net at Granton, just like the one we just put in. So we have the 2 half court that was brought up at that was in one of the recommendations in the master plan, was to build a little bit of a half court basketball. So we really like the net we did put in. And so we want to get a twin for it on the other side. Because the one, and then the only other one was the water line for the gardens that we were hoping to do this year. We just didn't get the time. So we're putting it back in for next year to put a water line to the new garden area so it's closer that they can water. Because right now it's a bit of a haul to get it over there. And our staff would do that. It's just the material to get it over there. So gladly take any questions on that stuff.
Curious about the stencils can be used everywhere, right? Yeah, because it's under the Spencer Park. I think that's kind of a general, they threw it in there, but that's great. Yeah, that's all I really have here. I kind of already knew about a few things that had been changed, so that's good. All right, thank you.
Yeah, just so I'm on the record, it did get put in Spencer just because we had to put it somewhere. I think that's where we're starting. But yeah, the package of stencils we can do stencils everywhere, and we will just have to buy the paint. But that's kind of where we just started the process.
I guess I should.
Yeah, we're always discussing that, and we do still have the tree budget of 5,000, so that can definitely be a spot where we specifically look. I know we did plant a couple, but we wanted to plant more and just didn't get the ability to do it this year. But we can definitely focus on Spencer because it is a spot that could use some trees. We're still working on a bit of a drainage issue down the one that we can't really plant trees down there because it's so wet and we're having trouble even cutting it. But we think we have a drainage fix for that we can do in the spring, and then hopefully we can start planting some more trees down in that area.
Yeah, Madam Mayor. Maybe just add a comment there. We're starting and we did follow up with the Old Clover subdivision of putting trees in the boulevards. So I did have a couple of calls about if there could be further trees extended in some of the boulevard areas, and Spencer would be one of the ones that would be ideal to add to that, especially because of the trail or the walkway in that park is off the edge of road. So there could be, more something there. So definitely we'll be looking at more trees in the boulevards.
So when you say trees in the boulevard, like on,
Township property?
but like, so like the extension of the a residential property?
Yeah, yeah,
Oh, so
Yeah.
that's new.
yeah.
Cause, interesting.
Yeah.
But it would
So
be the
we're-
homeowner that would put the tree in, or we're putting the trees in?
No, we would put the tree in. Yeah, because it would be our property.
Right.
Yeah.
Interesting. Okay. No, just because I think our policy had always been no trees in the boulevards
Yeah.
prior to that, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, that was mostly due to the number of services that are underground.
Right.
We didn't want to plant a tree over top of gas,
Yeah.
hydro,
Yeah.
everything like that. So there's certain locations where, it's actually not there, and it lends itself to some planting. So you know, I think we all recognize the value of trees and we're trying to identify those locations and put them in those locations that we can, so.
Yeah, just wondering, like, would the ratepayers have any input into what kind of trees, or whether maybe one of them may want a specific kind of tree or not want a tree? Would there be any input from the ratepayers, or?
Well, if we're looking at trees in the boulevard, there's set trees that should be planted in the boulevard. And we want them, so we don't want all of a street of maple and we don't want all of a street of oak. So you want a very good variety in case there's a pest or, you know, disease or that sort of thing. So, unfortunately, we would certainly be open for a homeowner to request something, but we can't guarantee it.
We'll move along to miscellaneous expenses. Again, noted there about insurance. Parks and Rec did see quite a big increase year over year. I think that's attributed to not only taking on a new building, but also there was a facility audit that went through for the buildings and the parks and identified different areas were missing insurance, or they increased the replacement value of those items. So they did see a significant increase from in our renewal we had September 1st. So hopefully we don't have the same increase coming of the same level. So that's why I put the same 5% in for the last 4 months of 2026. Office supplies, we brought that down because the 2025 budget had some items in there for new equipment that we don't need to continue with. The clothing and safety wear, we increased that budget. If you remember, early in 2025, we revamped the policy regarding clothing and safety wear to recognize the increase in cost of work boots. So we increased the reimbursement to employees for buying their own work boots. The payroll service fees, I created a new line for that. That used to be part of the bank fees line. So I created a new one to have more transparency on that, break that out. And that's again the same conversation we had in the admin side where our implementation credit was depleted in 2025. So, and Parks and Rec does have a heavy increase in staff, especially in the summertime. So that's why their budget is higher than what we have in admin. It's just based on the people. And that's all the comments I had for Parks and Rec expenses. So if there's any other questions regarding that, then we can talk about next steps.
Did you have any comments, Alex?
A lot to take in.
Yeah, it is. Okay. All right, next steps.
So next steps would be if we want, I know we got through all of this, so we don't necessarily need to have continue the meeting tomorrow, but if you want, or if you want time to have a chance to, if you just want to receive the report and then come back, we can plan a future meeting date after you've had time to go through it all. If you have any recommendations that you want to make to council, or we just bring it like this to council, or if there's some changes that you'd like to make, I'm sure there is, or propose, so we can either continue and do that tomorrow if you only need today, or we can do a future meet towards the end of November. I think when everybody is available again, and if after you had some time to go through it, maybe we'll have some other new numbers have come up that we get in November, like the OMPF, the OPP, some of the payroll costs with the CBPEI, those kinds of levels, WSIB that come later, or those kind of things. So that would be recommendation if you have, or you just move and present this the way it is to council.
Well, my initial thought is no, we should come back because I do think after going through it, I mean, there's been lots of discussion perhaps maybe there are some things that we can talk about and bring back and look at adjustment. I wouldn't want this necessarily to go to council this way without some further input. Whether that happen, I don't know whether that happens tomorrow or whether we look at when you do have those figures back. I'm wondering, like, we're meeting as a whole at 3 tomorrow. Like, I wonder what your thoughts would be, maybe meeting 1:30, to just kind of reflect on that and then maybe then set another meeting for when you've got some further figures.
So when staff availability and such, I think we're looking at the end of November, the date, so we can see how it goes, and then we don't just decide a date in this meeting, we can talk about that offline, what date works best, but we want to decide that sooner than later for
Yeah.
everyone's schedules. I think that's a good idea. If you think you're ready to talk again tomorrow afternoon, then
Yeah,
Initially?
if it does stuff, I mean, is there availability for everybody around 1:30 tomorrow? And then that just gives us a little bit of flexibility, even if we only take half an hour, 45 minutes, but does that work?
I think that's good. So we just would then, would the motion just be to receive and then reconvene at, because then that allows us to extend this agenda without having to post a new one. So
Oh, you got some advice from a clerk on that motion. Okay. Okay, so motion to receive this report for information and reconvene our finance committee meeting tomorrow at 1:30. Alex and I, all in favor, and that's carried. Okay, lot of heavy lifting done by everybody. Lots in this budget, but thank you. Thank you very much. Certainly big numbers, big numbers. But I believe we're not the only municipality having those discussions and those numbers. So. All right, motion to adjourn.